drinking buddies. I thought I would test out something really fun today. I've heard over the years that the temperature at which you drink your whiskey at can really affect the flavor, and let's find out.
I'm your drinking buddy.
All right, drinking buddies. So I went to my local Total Wine and I picked up some shooters. I was expecting to be able to buy something, kind of nice to be able to do this project with because I wanted to use shooters for it, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the best they had was Buffalo Trace. So I decided to go with that. And so there are 3 Buffalo Trace shooters in here. This one is at room temperature. It's about 72 degrees. This one is at refrigeration temperature. It's about 40 degrees. And this one was in my freezer. It's about 0 to 5 degrees. I don't know, my thermometer doesn't go that low. So at around 10 degrees, it just said LLL. So I don't know, it was going down when it hit 10. Less than 10 degrees. But I've heard that if you taste your whiskey when it's been in the freezer, you can't taste as much flavor off of it. It potentially might even ruin it. So I wanted to see if I can taste the differences between them and see if there's more flavor on the room temperature one or potentially less flavor on the frozen one. So let's go through these quick. I'm gonna start with the room temperature, and I'm gonna go through them quick because I don't want these to drop in temperature anymore or raise in temperature any more than they already are. So for glass 1, standard Buffalo Trace, smells like cherries, a little baking spice. These are a very low rye bourbon. And yet they really do pick up. I always get cinnamon off of Buffalo Trace Mash 1. The cherries there. Vanilla, but all of Mash Bill 1 has a lot of vanilla characteristics for me. Very common flavor on a lot of bourbons, but especially Mash 1. I'm gonna move on to number 2 to see if it's a little thinner or if it tastes any different at all. Well, I will say, I feel like there's less of a nose. The nose is tamed down. Now I'm picking up grain off this one that I don't pick up off of this one. So the cherry's here, but it's flatter. There's way less nose. Not even kidding. There is something pleasant about having something cold hit your lips. It's a little refreshing, but I'm not drinking bourbon to hydrate. That's why I drink water in between each glass. So I don't mind if my whiskey is at room temperature, especially if I'm not sacrificing taste. And there's no way to do this study blind because I'm gonna know which one is refrigerated because it's colder, and I'm gonna know which one is frozen because it's gonna be even colder than that. But I will say already that I think I know a difference between the room temperature and the cold. It tastes a little sweeter. The vanilla is tamed down. The cherry is there, but it's lighter. The cinnamon is there. Yeah, just honestly, it just tastes like maybe you added a few drops of cold water to this, but there are no water in these. So very interesting, very interesting. Let's go on to the frozen. Now that's just a straight up anomaly. I smell more off of the frozen one than I did off of this one. There's like no difference in the nose between 1 and 3. Except I can tell that this glass is colder. Other than that, there's no difference. Yeah, so like I said, cherries, cinnamon, and grains. Very, very light oak smell. Yeah, very light oak smell. Now, freezing it definitely changes the viscosity in my mouth. It's more syrupy. I actually feel like I pick up more of the proof. Tastes hotter. Like I would guess that this was a higher proof than 90 proof. This is a 90 proof bourbon, and the coldest one tastes hotter. I wonder if that's just purely because some of those flavors are tamed down a little bit, so I'm only left with the flavors of the ethanol. Now, I know that when you put an ice cube in some whiskey or some whiskey stones, I know a lot of people hate on whiskey stones. Sometimes I feel like drinking a colder beverage, especially in the summer. So I'm not against ice. I'm not against whiskey stones. I'm not against throwing it in a rocks glass over a big sphere of ice. 90% of the time when I drink whiskey, I'm drinking it neat. Probably 95 these days. But when I first got into bourbon, the way I generally drank it was I would take it neat in a glass like this and I would throw in one small ice cube. And I always felt like the water dilution would help open up some of the flavors as well as, chill it a little bit. And I have always heard, whiskey stones don't lower the temperature enough. And, I used a temperature gun in a previous video where I tested the whiskey stones and they did drop the temperature of the whiskey dramatically. But maybe people are anti-whiskey stones because that's not necessarily a good thing to drop the temperature of the whiskey. Sometimes I want a cold drink, so ice cubes or whiskey stones or whatever it might be fine. But for the most part, I'm just gonna drink it neat. And this test kind of shows that that's the right mentality to have. It's thinner. It's like there's a little bit of cinnamon here, and proof. Different texture. I like the texture. Maybe I might enjoy drinking this in the summer when it's hotter. I'm actually very surprised by these results. I feel like it got worse on taste. It got worse on finish, and this one's the worst on the nose, but this one definitely, very weirdly, the nose is the same, but this one is a little more muted. That's wild. I don't understand the science behind that. Maybe somebody can tell me in the comments, but overall, I'm gonna say drink your whiskey at room temperature, and if you want to throw a chunk of ice in there, you want to keep a bottle in the freezer, and that makes you happy, do it. You just might be sacrificing a little bit of that flavor by doing so, especially with the ice. Dilution really, really changes the flavor of a whiskey. Oftentimes, especially on a Scotch, when you add ice to it, it's only usually 80 or 86 proof. And once that ice is in there, it mutes so much of those flavors, dulls them down to the point where you're really only tasting the ethanol and maybe a little bit of malt. But hey, you like whiskey on the rocks? Drink it on the rocks. You like whiskey neat? Drink it neat. Whatever makes you happy. For now, I know, don't keep it in the refrigerator though. Cheers, drinking buddies. We'll see you on the next one.